The following is a special presentation. Eyewitness News and the Providence Journal bring you live coverage now. A Campaign 2012 congressional debate.
Right now from the Providence Performing Arts Center, the first live televised debate between Democratic Congressman David Cicilline and his Republican challenger Brendan Doherty. With polls showing a close race in the 1st Congressional District, tonight is an important night for undecided voters and for these two candidates hoping to earn their vote. Good evening, I'm Tim White. We have a lot of important issues to tackle tonight as we learn about the differences between two men looking for your vote. And over the next 90 minutes, we'll be doing just that, going in depth. Tonight's debate is airing live right now on WPRI 12, the televised portion, and as well on WPRI.com. The televised portion ends at 8 o'clock, but the debate will continue online on WPRI.com until 8:30, when we will include some questions submitted by you, Eyewitness News viewers. I will be moderating this debate and asking questions along with our panel, WPRI.com reporter Ted Nesi, and from our news partner, the Providence Journal, Edward Acorn. Now let's get down to business. We'll begin with 1-minute opening remarks from each of our candidates. And again, I would like everyone to hold their applause until the very end of the debate so everyone here at the Providence Performing Arts Center, as well as the people watching at home, can hear what the candidates have to say. The order for opening statements was determined by a drawing. We begin with Democrat David Cicilline. Mr. Cicilline is the incumbent U.S. Congressman for Rhode Island's 1st District. Before that, he served as mayor of Providence for 8 years. He was also a 4-term state representative. Mr. Cicilline, your opening remarks.
Thank you very much, and thank you to WPRI for hosting this debate, and thank you to Mr. Doherty for agreeing to participate. The stakes in this election are incredibly high, and ultimately this is really about priorities. Tonight you're going to hear about the priorities that I've been fighting for, the things I've heard from seniors, from small business owners, and from families trying to make ends meet all across the 1st District. Investments in education, from Head Start to Pell Grants, rebuilding our infrastructure, reinvigorating Rhode Island manufacturing, helping small business, and fighting to protect and strengthen Social Security and Medicare. We also have to be serious about addressing our national debt, but do it in a way that honors our values as a country, a balanced way, so that everyone plays by the same set of rules, everyone does their fair share, and everyone has a fair shot at the American dream. I look forward to tonight's discussion of these important issues.
Thank you, Mr. Cicilline. Now we go to Republican candidate Brendan Doherty. Mr. Doherty is the former superintendent and colonel of the Rhode Island State Police, and in that position he also headed the Department of Public Safety. This is his first run for public office. Mr. Doherty, your opening remarks.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank the folks from Channel 12 and the Providence Journal and the folks from PPAC for offering this beautiful venue, and welcome Congressman Cicilline. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm running for Congress because I believe Washington needs a stronger voice. I think Rhode Island needs a stronger voice to go to Washington. And I think we'll all agree that Congress is broken. This is the greatest country in the world, but Washington's broken. Republicans and Democrats couldn't agree that it's dark out right now. So I'm going to Washington to fight for jobs every day and to create an environment to grow jobs. And also, Congressman, to fight for Social Security and Medicare every day. So I appreciate you having me here, and Congressman, I thank you for agreeing to this debate. I look forward to it.
Thank you, gentlemen. I want to tell you both that it is an honor to have the opportunity to moderate this debate. This is clearly a very important race. And as you both know, there is no strict format to this debate. We're looking for an open and honest discussion of the issues. We will allow for some back and forth. In fact, we encourage it as long as it's on topic. If I feel you're going too long or you're not answering the questions, I will jump in. Let's begin. We're going to start with, I think, an obvious topic. Rhode Island has the 2nd highest unemployment rate in the nation, so it should come as no surprise to either of you that our polling shows the biggest issue for voters out there is jobs. So let's start there. Mr. Doherty, to you first. The most specific jobs proposal on your website is your support for the Infrastructure, Jobs, and Energy Independence Act. Make your pitch right now to 60,000 unemployed Rhode Islanders. How exactly would that help them back to work, and how soon?
First of all, the Infrastructure, Jobs, and Energy Independence Act that I embrace creates 1.2 million jobs per year. And it's all about jobs.
1.2 million jobs per year in Rhode Island or in the nation?
In the nation. And it's all about creating an environment where we can tap into our natural resources and create jobs through the opportunities in Alaska and in the outer continental shelf and in the Gulf of Mexico, to create jobs through our energy independence. We've been talking about our energy independence since 1973, since the Arab oil embargo. So it's about time we do something about it. And we can create jobs there. There are plenty of opportunities for the lease of federal lands so that we can glean revenue from that and put it toward renewable energy, infrastructure jobs. We have crumbling bridges and roads, and put people back to work, to put the road builders back. And the revenues from that would also go to other areas like clean water and renewable energy. And there's a piece of that I want to put toward our job skills gap. Now, let me tell you.
But how is all of this going to? I heard you talk a lot about energy, and might help out Alaska a lot. But I'm still sort of missing where does it play for Rhode Island?
Let me speak to that, because it would bring the revenues from that would be put toward renewable energy, infrastructure, clean coal, and also to fill our skill sets gap, because I'd like a piece of that to go to a two-year or one-year degree for manufacturing. All the manufacturers that I go to visit tell me that they could hire 5 people tomorrow if we could fill that skill sets gap.
I want to stay on jobs for a bit. And Congressman, instead of looking at your jobs plan now, I decided to look back at your 2010 jobs plan, and we had this discussion 2 years ago on this very stage, and it's evident that 2 years has gone by very fast. Your big idea then was your Make It in America block grant, and as it turns out, still just an idea. Is this a failure on your part to get Rhode Islanders back to work, or is the real truth that as much as candidates like to talk about it on the campaign trail, there is really very little a single congressman can do to create jobs?
Well, I think there's a lot we can do to create jobs, and the Make It in America block grant is part of a larger package of legislation that we've put forth that will really help to reinvigorate manufacturing, not only here in Rhode Island, but all across the country. Manufacturing is part of the kind of DNA of our state. We have a long history of manufacturing. Some things are now happening in the world. Wages are starting to rise in Asia. Energy prices are very high, so the cost of transporting goods is quite high. So this is a moment where if we do some things, we can actually really, really grow manufacturing. One, we need to end the tax breaks that companies get for shipping American jobs overseas. 2, we need to pass the currency manipulation bill that will prevent the Chinese from cheating and artificially depressing the value of their currency, and thereby depressing the value of Chinese-produced goods that puts Rhode Island and American manufacturers at a disadvantage. We need to make permanent the research and development tax credit. The Make It in America block grant is a part of that proposal. We have been pressing that. A piece of the Make It in America agenda, the American Competitiveness Act, has been passed. But this is an area where there should be bipartisan support.
But there isn't, and you haven't been able to gain that in the last 2 years. So how will the next 2 years be any different?
Well, first of all, this is only part of what I think we need to do to get this economy moving. We need to promote the Make It in America agenda to rebuild American manufacturing. I was at a manufacturer today in Pawtucket, Central Falls, where this is a manufacturer that's growing jobs. But we need to create incentives, tax breaks for keeping those jobs here.
The GOP controls the House. How are you going to convince them this is a great idea?
No, we have to work together on manufacturing, particularly because I think that exists in lots of districts. We need to make sure small business has access to capital. We need to make sure that there's a trained workforce for the jobs that are available in the 21st century. We need to fund research and innovation so that we can continue to be the place in the world that new discoveries and new technologies are developed. But the Make It in America agenda is really about recognizing if we're going to remain a leading economic power in the world, we have to make things in this country and export American-made goods, not American jobs.
Mr. Doherty, there isn't much bipartisan support here. I'm wondering if you heard anything in that as if you were to make it to Congress, you would support something like the Make It in America block grant.
Well, you've mentioned the Infrastructure Jobs and Energy Independence Act. That's a bipartisan effort. And that brings money to America. That takes money from the ground and helps stimulate our economy. The congressman, all due respect to the congressman, he wants to take money out of people's pockets to redistribute wealth. The Made in America block grant is just another example of picking winners and losers, like the Economic Development Partnership. That's all that is.
Mr. Cicilline
It's a
respond.
pass-through
I'd
to
like
give
to
out
first
to
I'd like Mr. Cicilline to respond.
I'd like to first respond to the energy plan that Mr.
Sure.
Doherty has talked about, H.R. 861. This is a plan that has 20 sponsors, 6 Democrats, which essentially is a plan for more drilling. This was exactly the approach they used to try to fund the transportation bill, and the Congressional Budget Office did an analysis of it. And what it finds out is that it will produce about $2.4 billion over, $4.3 billion over 10 years, according to the Congressional Budget Office, which is less than 1.10% of the revenue that was needed to fund the transportation bill. So they're using the same model here, exactly the same model. Give out more leases, a big giveaway to big oil, and use whatever money's generated. Let me finish, please, Mr. Doherty. A big giveaway to big oil, and then we'll use that money to invest in infrastructure. When we already know, according to the best available data as of February of this year, there are more oil rigs in operation in the United States than the rest of the world combined, and there are 22 million leased onshore sites that are not being drilled. So this notion of giving a huge, let me just finish. It also does not include a repeal of the subsidies to big oil. That's part of the answer, is end the $4 billion a year in subsidies and invest that in renewable energy. This is a giveaway to big oil.
Look, the cheese is sliding off the Jobs cracker here, okay? I'm going to allow you to respond, Mr. Doherty, to everything he just had to say right there.
You know, briefly, it's just, again, it's picking winners and losers with the American Block Grant. This is a bipartisan bill. This is what's wrong with America right now, what's wrong with Congress. We can't, the Democrats and Republicans can't sit together to push a bill forward. This is a bipartisan bill, and matter of fact, one of Congressman Cicilline's friends, Congressman Costa from California, is on the Energy Working Group, and he supports this bill. This brings renewable energy, energy efficiency, clean coal technology, clean water and wastewater infrastructure, and infrastructure for our roads and highways and bridges. We know we need that very badly. So why not take the money out of the ground rather than tax businesses, small businesses like David wants to do?
30 seconds. 30 seconds.
The numbers just don't add up. This is a giveaway to big oil. I have a bill that actually repeals the subsidies. The Make in America Block Grant, while Mr. Doherty may not like it, the Brookings Institute has recognized it as a great proposal, and I'm happy to say that when we're picking winners and losers, American manufacturing is something we should be investing in.
And Mr. Doherty, since, actually, you had the first word on this part, we'll go with Ed Acorn from the Providence Journal.
Yes, Mr. Cicilline, in an op-ed piece that your 2010 opponent, John Laughlin, sent to the Providence Journal, he wrote that he spoke the truth about Providence's terrible financial problems, but you, as he put it, had the gall, the arrogance, to refer to my rendering of the truth as reckless political attacks, in effect branding me a liar who would say anything to get elected. He said that was hard for him and his family because he served in the military and private life as a man of honor. Since your successor as Providence mayor admitted the city was indeed in serious financial trouble, do you owe Mr. Laughlin an apology, and why or why not?
Look, I've talked a lot about the way I described the city during the last campaign, and I explained that I have regrets about the way that I talked about it, and I've talked a lot about that. And during the course of the campaign, there were efforts made that things were just delivered to talk show radio hosts before they were delivered to the city that I think added to the politicization of this issue. And I think there were representations made in the course of that campaign that turned out not to be accurate in terms of the city. I think Mr. Laughlin said things about the city running out of money, which was not accurate. So, look, I've talked a lot about this. I've accepted responsibility for every decision I made. I certainly have acknowledged to Tim and others, I've talked a lot about this, regretting the way I talked about it. But, you know, there's been a lot of conversation about Providence in this campaign. And the truth is, when I'm out traveling around this district, what people are really worried about is we have 60,000 Rhode Islanders out of work. We have almost 50,000 Rhode Island families whose mortgages are underwater. Seniors are worried about whether or not Medicare and the guarantee of Medicare is going to survive. And so I've continued to focus on that. I've acknowledged and expressed regret for the way I talked about Providence. And I've talked about it every time I've been asked about it.
Do you owe Mr. Laughlin an apology?
I don't think I owe Mr. Laughlin an apology. I think we, again, in the context of that campaign, there were lots of arguments made, and I don't.
Good. Mr. Doherty, you've been running ads blasting Mr. Cicilline for saying he left Providence in excellent financial shape, yet Mr. Cicillini's successor as mayor has endorsed him for Congress, and voters in several polls have given Mr. Cicilline the lead. Is it time to move on to other business?
No, I don't think it's time. And as a matter of fact, I'd like to go back to the other question for 1 second, because I just happened to spot that Representative Lieutenant Colonel Laughlin is here with us today, and I appreciate the good work he did for our country. No, it's not. The time is not to go past this. It's not over for the firemen, the policemen, the teachers of the city of Providence. You know, this goes back to the deception of Congressman Cicilline back in October of 2010. It reminds me of the old saying, "Oh, what a wicked web when we first set out to, well, oh, what a wicked web we weave when we first set out to deceive." That was Congressman Cicilline was the captain of that ship, and he sailed that ship right into what Mayor Tavares has described as a Category 5 hurricane. And just as he got into the Category 5 hurricane, the congressman jumped off and went to Washington. But prior to that, he locked out the auditors. No, we know, and the congressman has said that he didn't lock any doors on anyone. He didn't put any chains on any doors. He just prevented the auditors from doing their job. So in an interview during that campaign with Representative Laughlin, he described the city as being in excellent condition, excellent fiscal condition, and then later described it as maybe he should have used the word threatened. I've never felt threatened when I feel excellent, so I don't understand how those go together. And this is like a husband and wife that have a joint account, and the wife asks, "Why can't I get to the checkbook?" And he said, "Well, don't worry about it. Everything's in excellent condition here. Don't worry about
Mr.
it."
Doherty,
and then a few months later, let me just finish this one thought. A few months later, people are knocking on the door to repossess the car, and the house is going into foreclosure. And he says, "I'm a glass half full type of guy."
He had about 3 analogies in that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the important...
I would like to remind the crowd to please keep it down. Thank you very much.
In response to your question, is it time to move on? Let's be clear. Mr. Doherty understands that if he talks about what he would actually do if he got to Washington, Rhode Island voters won't vote for him. And so he has spent most of this campaign, and he'll spend most of tonight, doing everything he can to distract voters from the real issues. The fact that he opposes the Buffett rule, which would require millionaires and billionaires to pay at least the same tax rate as middle-class families. He supports the House Republican leadership. He supports them being in the majority. He supports Mitt Romney. He supports repeal of health care and wants to start that process all over again. He's anti-choice. He supports extending the Bush tax cuts for millionaires and billionaires. He opposes the Disclose Act. And so his election would mean we put in place the House Republican leadership and an extreme agenda which is bad for Rhode Island and bad for our country. And he will spend most of his time talking about everything but what he actually do if he got to Washington.
We're going to be tackling that tonight. Final word on this subject, if we could.
Well, you know, if the congressman had a long record in Washington, I suppose we could talk about those issues. But he's 0 for 10 with the bills, and he still hasn't apologized for being intellectually dishonest to the people of the city of Providence. He went on an apology tour, but didn't admit that he lied to get to Washington. So if he does that tonight, I'll move on, and I'll never talk about it again the rest of my life.
All right, let's move on to the next question. Ted Nesi from WPRI.com.
Well, this relates to the previous discussion. Mr. Doherty, you often say that although you're running as a Republican, you're your own man and you don't share all the views of Mitt Romney and Vice Presidential candidate Paul Ryan. But Mr. Cicilline, as we just heard, calls you a Romney Republican. Can you name one issue, please, where you agree with Mitt Romney's position and one where you disagree with him?
Sure. Where I agree with him is to bring the corporate tax rate down. He's talked about bringing the corporate tax rate down. As a matter of fact, that's a bipartisan issue because Bill Clinton talked about it, and now President Obama has espoused that same idea. And did you say disagree?
And then where do you disagree with Mitt Romney?
Well, I disagree with privatizing Medicare or the voucher system. I disagree with the voucher system.
You would not vote for any type of voucher premium support program for Medicare?
Never vote to privatize Social Security or Medicare. I've been saying that over and over again. But the congressman has sent out literature saying that that's not true. But I'm here to tell you that I would never vote to privatize Social Security or Medicare.
Mr. Cicilline, you've spent most of this campaign criticizing national Republicans and said Brendan Doherty is one of them, but you've also said, as you did tonight, you want to work across the aisle in Congress. We know where you disagree with Mitt Romney. Can you name any major issue where you agree with Mr. Romney?
I think the president has said the same thing that Mitt Romney has said, that we need to make the corporate tax rate more competitive. I think it has to be part of a comprehensive tax reform.
So that's a point of agreement between the both of you.
Yeah. And do you want me to list where I disagree with Mitt Romney?
No, I'm sure you will.
We don't have enough time tonight to get through that.
We only have 90 minutes, so we can move on 10 minutes.
All right. Next question here. Just over a month ago, Ambassador Chris Stevens and 3 others were killed in an attack on the U.S. consulate in Benghazi, Libya. The Obama administration originally said this was as a result of a protest gone bad. But more information has emerged that it was actually an organized assault on a U.S. interest on the anniversary of 9/11. Congressman, you're a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Why haven't you called for a hearing before your committee on this?
Well, there's an investigation underway, a review underway by the Department of State. I think we have to begin by acknowledging that the loss of 4 Americans is something we should all mourn. These are extraordinary public servants and those in the Foreign Service who represent our country all over the world, sometimes in very dangerous places. And so I think we should never lose sight of the sacrifices that were made. The Department of State has indicated that they intend, and our full review of this is underway. I think we should await the outcome of that review, and I can assure you that there will be hearings both in the House and Senate. I'm quite certain of that.
Do you feel the White House has been less than transparent on this issue?
I don't think there's any evidence to suggest they've been less than transparent. I think what has been revealed is that some of the early intelligence information was changed or received new information that changed the belief of the intelligence authorities. I think the review will determine where the intelligence failing occurred, and I think we should await. This is a very serious matter. I think we should await the full review that's underway before we jump to conclusions.
What do you think, Mr. Doherty? Should we wait, or should we hold public hearings, as some are calling for in Congress?
I think we should hold public hearings, but obviously we need to keep close to the vest that information that would be of national security. So it's unfortunate that this administration wasn't more transparent, but you know, in the political cycle, I think we need to be very careful in talking about issues like this, international issues like this, because look, we have, this is the greatest country in the world, and we need to secure the United States of America. But sometimes the political rhetoric gets carried away as it relates to these issues.
You said that we should hold public hearings, but keep some of the things close to our vest. And
well,
I know what you mean. You mean classified information.
Exactly, classified information.
Then how effective would a public hearing be if you have to withhold some information that could be vital to revealing what actually happened?
Well, I believe in the transparency of those hearings, but there may be information that's not able to be released because there may be information that's important to the intelligence community and the safety of Americans abroad. So that was a terrorist attack, and we need to be strong in our conviction of how we're going to handle it in the investigation. But I do believe that there's nothing wrong with starting a hearing on that.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you. Ed Acorn, next question, please.
Yes, Mr. Doherty, in a Channel 12 survey last month, voters by a 63 to 31% margin said it was more important to protect Social Security and Medicare than to tackle the national debt. That is one reason for politicians to say they will not touch these programs, but is that realistic? Given that the trustees of these programs say they are running out of money, don't Social Security and Medicare have to be reformed to be saved?
Absolutely. You know, I've espoused the Simpson-Bowles plan as it relates to Social Security, and that talks about a gradual increase, not for our seniors who are collecting now. Our seniors should be safe. Our seniors about to go on should be safe, but it's a gradual increase down the road. If somebody that's, like, say, 50 years old today may have to wait a couple of months before they receive that benefit, because we know that the Social Security Trust Fund annual report has stated that if we do nothing, it will be all over in 2033. There'll be no money left for Social Security. So we need to strengthen Social Security now, and there are ways we can do it. Again, I talk a lot about Simpson Bowles, and as a matter of fact, I was sat with Senator Alan Simpson yesterday in New York and talked about this and his ideas, and met Erskine Bowles, and I was very fortunate to be able to talk about these issues with them, like raising the wage cap, and I believe the congressman has espoused that same idea to raise the wage cap, but that alone won't do it. We need to tackle it, but in a reasonable manner, and our seniors on Social Security now are safe, and our seniors about to go on should be safe. They played by all the rules.
Same question.
I think with all due respect, Mr. Acorn, your question presents a false choice. I think we have to do both. We have to protect Medicare and Social Security and deal with the deficit, and we can do both. But I think Social Security and Medicare reflect our values as a country, that when you reach a certain age, after you've worked a certain number of years, you're guaranteed an income so you can live your retirement with dignity. And with Medicare, that when you reach a certain age, that you are guaranteed access to quality, affordable health care. The way that we drive down the costs of Medicare is not by increasing premiums or increasing the eligibility age and making less people covered. What we do instead is bend the cost curve by investing in wellness, prevention, new medical technologies, new treatments. Those will produce long-term savings in our healthcare system. With respect to Social Security, it used to be that Social Security was one leg of a three-legged stool. You had your pension, your savings, and Social Security. That's not the case anymore for many, many Rhode Islanders. More and more Rhode Islanders have seen their pension evaporate, have seen their savings evaporate, and they're relying on Social Security. For the average Rhode Islander, a Social Security benefit is $14,300, just above the poverty level. And so what we need to be figuring out is how do we actually increase benefits of Social Security so it provides a real way for seniors to live with security and with dignity. The Simpson Bowles, while there's a lot of stuff in it I like, it raises the retirement age for Social Security and cuts benefits. I was at a manufacturing facility this past week where folks are working with resin, with masks so they can breathe air clean. When those guys are done at 67, they're done. They can't work another year or two. So I think part of this is understanding that we have got to be committed to strengthening and protecting Social Security. There's an easy way to fix Social Security. It has not added $1 to the deficit. And there's an easy way to fix it.
Thank you. Mr. Doherty, anything in there that you heard that you like?
Yes. Well, there's a hardship clause. I think the Congressman was referring to the hardship clause in Simpson Bowles for those people who are working in dangerous conditions. And also in Simpson Bowles, after 20 years of the benefit, so someone around 85 years old, they get another bump. So, folks, I know quite a bit about the difficulties the seniors have, even in this political season, receiving letters and correspondence on regarding Social Security. They're afraid of it. They get the scare tactics, and frankly, some from my friend, the Congressman. My mom's 85 years old. She relies on Social Security and Medicare. We need to strengthen Social Security and Medicare. That's what we need to do in this next Congress.
Mr. Cicilline, I want you to respond to something here because, he pointed out in another answer, he pointed it out again, you're sending out mailers saying this guy, in short, is going to take away your Medicare, it's going to take your... So if he's saying that's not true, why are you spending money on the printing press to put
listen
them
to
out?
me. This is very, very simple. The Social Security and Medicare are programs that I believe in very strongly. Mr. Doherty has taken the decision raising the Social Security age is appropriate. I disagree. And voters have a right to know that that's his position. Similarly, the Republican House leadership is committed to the ending of the Medicare guarantee to turning it into a voucher, which would cost the average senior $6,000 more for care and produce less quality care over time. That's a fact. Paul Ryan is their nominee for the vice presidential nominee. It's been embraced by Mitt Romney. The reality is, if voters elect Brendan Doherty, he will go to Washington. He's committed already to supporting the House Republican leadership. He will empower them to make that a reality. The fact that he might ultimately vote for it later on, they don't need him at that point. He'll have put them in power. When you're control the Congress, you set the agenda for the next 2 years. You decide what bills are heard, what hearings are held. The President's American Jobs Act, a comprehensive jobs bill, never got a hearing or a vote because they decided he wasn't going to get one.
Thank you, Mr. Cicilline. Mr. Doherty, respond to that. You're going to vote the party line on these issues.
No, that's not what I said. I didn't say he's going to vote the party line. I said once he votes to install the Republican leaders, and once he puts them in power, they can continue to try to oppose the Buffett rule, repeal health care, turn Medicare into a guarantee.
We get it. Okay, Mr. Doherty.
So, you know, I've been saying this all along throughout this campaign that I'm my own man, and I will go to Washington to reach across the table to find common sense solutions to problems, to bring America forward. That's what's wrong with Congress right now. Congress is broken. Congressman Cicilline hasn't worked closely with Republicans. He just hasn't. He's voted about 96% of the time with the Democratic Party. That just isn't working right now. So, yes, I would be someone who would have a strong voice. I understand there'll be difficult situations in Washington where I might have to, I might not be in step with my own party. My friend Scott Brown in Massachusetts, he has made that decision. He votes about 66% with his own party. We need to do what we can to bring America forward. Republicans come up with good ideas, and so do Democrats, and they need to work together and fight this gridlock.
Thank you, Mr. Doherty. Ted Nesi.
Please, we will take the time from your candidate if you continue to applaud.
Can I respond?
No, you cannot.
Okay,
Mr.
we're going to move on.
We're moving on. I'd like to ask briefly, you mentioned the three-legged stool on retirements. Do you support the pension law, the state pension law that passed last November, Mr. Cicilline?
I think the pension reform is best done in the context of negotiations, and that's done at the local level with cities and towns. The state statutes are, the state pensions are set by statute. I think everyone recognizes that.
Do you support, just briefly, do you support the law?
Again, I think...
Because that's part of your three-legged stool. Do you support it?
No, I agree. And what I think is that we have to have public employees that have the ability to get good wages, good retirement security. And people made life decisions based on their retirement, and I think we have to do everything we can to honor those commitments and those promises.
That sounds like you oppose it.
To be very honest, I don't know every single detail of it, but I applaud Gina Raimondo and Speaker Fox and Senate President Pavel, who I think engaged in it in good faith and made determinations that had to be done to assure the solvency of the pension system. I think most employees know that they wanted to be certain that pension would be there for the future. It's not the optimal best way to do it, but I think the circumstances required it.
Mr. Doherty, on the pension law, do you support the state pension law that passed last fall?
That passed last fall. Listen, I believe we needed pension reform. Most retirees from the state understood that we needed pension reform, but I just wish it was done more fairer and more equitable. There's so many examples of, look, I know of a fellow who was injured on the job, and his pension was, he has a serious injury, and his pension was cut substantially. So it's not a one-size-fits-all, and I just wish that they put a little bit more effort into it. I'll give you an example.
We need to move on, Mr. Doherty. Thank you. I want to ask you about budget plans, which you've been both talking about. Mr. Cicilline, in 2011, you voted for the most liberal budget put forward in the House. It called for roughly 70% tax increases and only 30% spending cuts. Former President Clinton criticized that proposal. House Minority Leader Pelosi and your colleague Jim Langevin both voted against it. Why did you think that was the right budget for the country?
I think actually, if you're talking about the progressive budget, it strengthens Social Security, it eliminates the deficit in 11 years, it restores American competitiveness by investing in clean energy, job training, and education, it ends the war in Afghanistan, it ends subsidies for big oil, and I think it really reflects the values of Rhode Islanders. And in fact, what President Clinton said is that budget...
He said, I can tell you, he said there are obvious objections to the House progressive budget. And actually, he warned it could cause major companies to move overseas and wouldn't fix Social Security or Medicare. Is he wrong?
What President Clinton said is that this budget does two things, and I quote, "It does two things far better than the anti-government budget passed by the House. It takes care of older Americans and others who need help, and much more than the House plan or Simpson Bowles, it invests a lot of our tax money to get America back in the future business."
Then why did you switch sides this year and vote against the House progressive budget?
Because it included a middle-class tax increase that I didn't think was appropriate. But I think the President was very clear, President Clinton, that budget invests in the future business because it invested in education, infrastructure, innovation. It responsibly deals with the debt and eliminates it in 11 years. It strengthens and protects Social Security, and I think it made the right choices.
Thank you, Mr. Cicilline. Mr. Doherty, you were endorsed, as you mentioned, by the heads of the Simpson-Bowles Commission. A lot of people are expressing support for the Simpson-Bowles Deficit Reduction Commission, but there hasn't been as much discussion of the details. Simpson-Bowles would hike the federal gas tax by 15 cents a gallon and increase taxes on families who make more than $250,000 a year. Do you support those provisions of Simpson-Bowles?
No, listen, Simpson-Bowles is a starting point. You need to know that it makes a fairer, creates a fairer and flatter tax, individual tax. It brings the corporate tax rate down. The individual taxes are 28, 22, and 12%, and it also cuts the loopholes in tax expenditures. So what David, the congressman, describes as the millionaires and billionaires, they don't get to appreciate those loopholes anymore. It's like a maze. When someone's walking into a maze and they're walking into mirrors and walls, but not the ultra wealthy.
But as a congressman, you won't necessarily get to choose which piece of it. Would you support?
They get a map to the maze, and it eliminates that.
If Simpson-Bowles, as presented to President Obama, was on the table, would you vote yes or no?
No. Even in my discussion with Alan Simpson yesterday, he said that these are talking points. This is a starting point, and there's good ideas here. And President Obama actually appreciated those ideas. Would I vote for it right now? I'd need to take a measured approach.
Well, we know how you voted on it, Mr. Cicilline. Why were you against Simpson-Bowles?
Yeah, the vote we had was actually a vote that had deeper cuts and less generation revenue than Simpson-Bowles. It was introduced by Congressman La Tourette. Simpson-Bowles actually presents a whole set of recommendations and then leaves it to Congress to make choices. For example, it makes recommendations about closing loopholes or ending subsidies to industries, but doesn't explicitly call out the oil subsidies. So I think there are very good things about Simpson-Bowles. It puts revenues on the table. For the first time, we've had a discussion for the last 22 months. We've cut almost over $1 trillion already, which is about anywhere between 40 and 70% of what Simpson-Bowles requires in terms of cutting spending. We haven't done anything on the revenue side. And with, the problem has been the Republican House leadership has refused to have revenues on the table. 97 or 98% of them took the Grover-Norquist pledge. So what I think is good about Simpson-Bowles is it puts revenues on the table. It says do it in a balanced way. There's Domenici-Rivlin, which has a different balance, but they all include revenues. The big sticking point has been revenues.
On the Simpson-Bowles plan in the aspect of cutting government that you actually like? We know you like the revenue building side.
No. We already voted for over $1 trillion of spending cuts. Already. So that amounts to about 50–60% of what is required in Simpson-Bowles. We have more to do, but we've done nothing on the revenue side because the Republican House leadership has refused to close a loophole, to end a subsidy to big oil, to end a subsidy to big agricultural corporations, because they took a pledge to Grover-Norquist. So they've refused to put revenues on the table. That's part of the problem. So when Mr. Doherty talks about bipartisanship, part of it is also having people that are willing to find that common ground. The problem is they took an oath.
All right, Mr. Doherty, I'll give you the final word if you'd like it in this section before we move on to the next question.
I'd like to go back to the progressive budget for 1 second, if I can, what I call the oppressive budget. This is so far to the left. 77 Democrats voted for it, and 108 Democrats voted against it. So, the congressman talks about bipartisanship. He can never come over to the center. I'm in the center standing here. David is so far to the left. He's not your father's Democrat. He's not your grandfather's Democrat. He's not a John F. Kennedy Democrat or a John O. Pastore or our beloved Joe Garrahy. He's so far to the left. This adds tax rates of 45, 46, 47, 48, 49%. It would kill small businesses. We have 93,000 small businesses here in Rhode Island, and we need to grow more jobs. And by the way, it also reduces the U.S. Navy. We have 16,000 jobs in Aquidneck Island that rely on the U.S. Navy.
I don't want to spend a lot of time in a budget that didn't pass.
No, I agree.
Mr.
But
Cicilline,
I just want to be clear.
30-second response.
I want to be clear. This budget makes investments in the things that are really important to Rhode Island and really important to our country. Just to give you a sense of the assessment of it, the Washington Post said the Congressional Progressive Caucus plan wins the fiscal responsibility derby thus far. The Guardian says the most fiscally responsible in town would balance the books by 2021. The Economist called it courageous. I mean, there is an assessment of this. It makes investments in the things that are necessary for America to compete. It ends the war in Afghanistan. It strengthens and protects Social Security and Medicare. And again, President Clinton said this is the most comprehensive alternative to the budgets passed by the House. President Clinton, and look, you can assign labels all you want. What I'm fighting for are the things that I know are important to Rhode Island families, the things that I know will get Rhode Islanders back to work.
This is enough on this section. Let's move on. Politico named this race as one of the top 10 nastiest House races in the country. Here's an example. Mr. Doherty, in a press release, your campaign wrote, quote, Cicilline stood with violent criminals who beat and abused women. The National Republicans put out a text message that says, quote, David Cicilline tried to keep child molesters out of jail, end quote. Do you stand by that language?
Well, it was very simple. I would never have used that language. And by the way, some of that was from the National Republican.
Yeah, the first one.
I never had any conversations with them about that. They followed up in their own respect. But all due respect to the congressman, he was a criminal defense attorney. We would never have even had this conversation if not for his surrogates taking shots at me, saying that I'm weak on women's rights. Listen, I fought for women my whole career. And while I was advocating for VAWA grants and VOCA grants, the congressman was representing some of the very worst of Rhode Island. I'm through talking about it unless he wants to continue.
I have to laugh because you basically said he started it. And, I'm struck that you've worked in law enforcement for 3 decades.
Right.
And few people know the judicial system better than particularly the former superintendent of the Rhode Island State Police. People accused of a crime, don't they deserve to be represented in court?
Absolutely. They absolutely do. But we all have choices to make. And the congressman, look, I have many friends who are criminal defense attorneys. I understand they have a difficult job. And everyone should have fair representation in court. I'm very familiar with the courtroom work group. But Congressman Cicilline made the decision to bring this up. He made a decision to represent those people, and then he made a decision to run for Congress and then take a shot at me for not being strong on women's rights.
Mr. Cicilline, I want to, the first part of that.
Yeah.
How about that, though? Isn't he right? No one actually forces you to take on a client as a defense attorney.
Let's be clear. This is a coordinated strategy. This is a coordinated strategy by the Doherty campaign and the National Republicans. This is not a coincidence. Mr. Doherty had a press conference in front of a boxing ring to talk about domestic violence and listed clients I represented and made the claim that I was a criminal defense lawyer and X, Y, and Z. Right after that, the National Republican Party did the same thing and began a website and all this. This is a coordinated strategy, and it's for one simple reason. Mr. Doherty hopes that voters will never pay attention to what he would actually do if he got to Washington, and so this is another effort to
answer my question.
And let me just,
didn't you have a choice to represent these people?
I'm happy to answer your question. And this came about as a result of a position that Mr. Doherty took. The Senate passed the Violence Against Women Act, a bipartisan, Mr. Doherty talks about bipartisanship, a bipartisan bill. It strengthened VAWA by adding 4 underserved populations.
You are still not answering my question, Mr. Cicilline.
16.
We'll be here all night. Can you please tell us?
Look, of course I chose to be a lawyer. Nobody forced me to be a lawyer, of course. But listen to me, when you're a lawyer, you don't choose your clients. You have a responsibility. You take an oath to do your job. You don't go out and pick clients, number one. But let me just finish my point. This arose because the Senate passed the Violence Against Women Act. Every single Republican woman senator voted for it. It strengthens the Violence Against Women Act. It gets sent to the House. The House Republican leadership refuses to take the bill up. And Mr. Doherty has said he thinks they're right, that he would side with the House Republicans, and that if you want to serve all those other walks of life, as he calls them, do another bill. This is not my words. This is the words of the National Organization for Women, Terry O'Neill, the president, who said, we simply can't trust Brendan Doherty to put the interests of women ahead of his Republican Party leadership. Those are her words.
Mr. Doherty, please respond.
Okay. You know, the congressman's referring to people in Washington that I don't even know, and he's also stated that what you said, the House Republicans were against it?
No, I said every single House Republican senator voted for it, every woman senator.
I didn't need a House Republican to call me about it because I happen to know a little bit more about VOCA and VAWA than all of them put together. Because as the Commissioner of Public Safety, I wore two hats. As you know, I was the Colonel of the State Police and I was also the Commissioner of Public Safety, and one of those agencies that came under me was the Grants Administration Office, and I made sure it was run efficiently, and I made sure that those grants that would come in, that I made sure that they applied for the VAWA and VOCA grants, and they were properly disseminated. VAWA, for example, is Violence Against Women Act, and VOCA is Victims Against Crime Act, and that's all for training. I provided training for sexual harassment and domestic violence. Those were important to me, that those monies were disseminated properly, and it was well funded, and it also included the underserved community. So whatever group the congressman wants to talk about, they're covered. Violence, Victims of Crime Act covers everyone.
All right, thank you. I want to move on to the next question. Ed Acorn.
Yes, Mr. Doherty, the Providence Journal's PolitiFact ruled that you had made a false charge when you said Mayor Cicilline had espoused Providence as becoming a sanctuary city. What led you to believe his policies were making Providence a sanctuary city, and were you wrong?
Well, yeah, I said that in another forum a couple of weeks ago, and I really believe that it's true. I should have said tacitly espouse a sanctuary city, because with a wink and a nod, it's a little easier than to put a proclamation up and put them on telephone poles. There was a mixed message sent to the illegal community here in Rhode Island, and Congressman Cicilline, through his police chief, Dean Esserman, would not let the Providence police properly communicate and work with ICE. That's been said. That's been said, Congressman. So, yes, I believe that it was tacitly implied that it would be a sanctuary city. The only thing in its way was me, the Colonel of the State Police, because I followed the rule of law. And look, there's very difficult issues here. There's families that came here unlawfully, but they haven't committed a crime here. And then there are people who came here for the sole purpose of committing crimes from another country. And that's who I focused my career on in that respect, on criminal aliens who were, many of them were illegal re-entries, and that means that they had been deported before and back again. And on my watch, just before I retired, I oversaw the largest cocaine and monetary seizure in the history of Rhode Island. So those are the things that I was focusing on, and the congressman, through Dean Esserman, really didn't take those serious. But I need to say, the Providence Police, a great police department, hardworking men and women, but some of them were not able to effectuate.
That's a good idea. They're in the theater tonight. Ed, your question?
Do I get to respond to that?
Yes, Mr. Cicilline, were you weak on crimes committed by illegal aliens?
I'm very proud that while I was mayor of the city of Providence, we had the lowest crime rate in 30 years. The statement that Providence was a sanctuary city is absolutely false. In fact, the PolitiFact concluded that. In fact, there was a resolution introduced by a city council member that I spoke out against. It never happened. The Providence police worked in close cooperation with ICE on a regular basis. The brave men and women of the Providence Police did their job every day that I was mayor, do their job every day today. I don't know why Mr. Doherty made that statement, but it's patently not true. And I'm proud that Rhode Island and our country is a home to many immigrants. I'm the great-grandson of an immigrant. My family came here for the same reason most families come here, to build a better life for themselves and their families. We have to continue to be a place where we can attract the brightest minds from all over the world to study in our universities. We need comprehensive immigration reform that gives people a pathway to citizenship. But I don't have any idea why that suggestion.
Do you support that, a pathway to citizenship on the federal level?
I support comprehensive immigration reform to a pathway to legitimacy, so we can bring the people.
What does that mean?
Well, let me explain it. So we can bring the people who are here unlawfully out of the shadows, so they can be documented. We need to know who's here in this country, then come up with, in a bipartisan way, comprehensive immigration reform. But I just need to speak to that for one more second, if I could. I won't be long. Congressman, under your watch, Marco Reese was arrested several times and should have been deported had ICE known. Now, the hardworking men in the Providence Police Department, men and women, weren't able to communicate that message. Marco Reese raped a woman. You know the story. And I happened to meet with this woman a couple of days ago, and she's doing very, very well. But it's a difficult story to hear. And that happened because they were not able to follow the rule of law.
Was that more of a problem for the mayor of Providence, or is that a criticism, really, Mr. Doherty, of Colonel Dean Esserman, the former superintendent of the Providence
Colonel
Police
Dean
Department?
Esserman, the conversations that I had with him, he basically told me, as it relates to immigration issues, illegal immigration, he basically told me that the mayor wants to go easy on these issues.
And in your response, sir?
That's ridiculous.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
The Providence Police.
Here he goes again.
The Providence Police. The Providence Police had an ongoing working relationship. This is, again, an effort to talk about an event in an effort to distract attention from the real issues in this campaign. Dean Esserman was chief of this police department for 8 years. He did extraordinary work, brought extraordinary resources to the city, had the lowest crime rate in 30 years as a result of relationships and community policing, and I think his work speaks for itself.
Yeah, real brief. I covered that story so briefly. I do remember that the Providence Police Department had to fax over information, and a lot of people in federal law, Mr. Doherty, a lot of people, particularly in federal law enforcement, took huge issue with this sort of 1980s approach of sharing information.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
So was that a direct?
Absolutely. There was a process by which information was faxed, and then improvements were made, so it was done by computer, but it was never that the Providence Police were not cooperating and working with ICE.
All right, let's move on to the next topic.
It was a multi-system failure.
Mr. Cicilline, in June, you voted against a bipartisan bill to repeal a tax on medical device manufacturers. 2 months later, at a forum you organized that I attended, a local manufacturing CEO told you the tax is a major problem for his industry, and it's causing jobs to get sent overseas. Do you believe him?
Look, I think this is part of the health care reform bill. I don't believe that this effort to essentially unfund healthcare reform. Healthcare reform is funded from a variety of different sources. There was a compromise with the medical device industry when healthcare reform was passed.
It didn't sound like Stephen Lane had signed on to any compromise.
No, I understand that individual had that experience, but the basis of it is that there are 30 million new customers added to the healthcare system for medical devices. And so on balance, the industry believed that that very modest tax was a good exchange. Your very own newspaper, the Providence Journal, made the same conclusion in an editorial. So I think, look, this was a part of an ongoing Republican effort to basically chip away at health care reform by
That's not quite
funding.
right, though, Ms. Cicilline. Elizabeth Warren, a Massachusetts Democrat, a staunch supporter of President Obama, supported the bill. Al Franken supported it.
No, I understand. I disagree. This is part of the way we funded the health care reform.
But I thought you talk about manufacturing as your most important issue.
No, I understand that. This is part of the way that we fund healthcare reform and make sure that kids can stay on their parents' plan until they're 26. The donut hole gets closed for seniors. We have no more lifetime caps on health insurance, that we ensure that children born with pre-existing medical conditions can be covered. So there's lots of benefits to the healthcare reform bill. And unlike Mitt Romney and Mr. Doherty, who say, well, I like all the good stuff, but nothing that pays for it, this was part of a multifaceted approach to pay for healthcare reform. And again, the national organizations that represented medical devices said, we're going to...
Shouldn't you be speaking to our local medical device manufacturers?
No, I do. I spoke to Stephen Lane at some length about it. Absolutely.
All right, Mr. Doherty, that tax on medical device manufacturers is helping to pay for President Obama's health care laws. He said, you said you'll vote to repeal the health care law, but you've said you won't do so unless certain parts of it are kept in place. What parts of the law do you say must be kept in place before it's repealed?
Sure, but I'd just like to respond to that real quick. That medical device, we have great medical device companies, manufacturing companies right here in Rhode Island, and the conversations that I have had with them are scary. One fellow said he'd like to move out of the country if that is applied. So I've talked about the Affordable Health Care Act and the respect that, we all want all Americans to be covered. But we need a bipartisan effort in doing that. We need this to stand the test of time, like Social Security and Medicare did. There are great ideas, and I have said it before. The Democrats come up with good ideas, and Republicans come up with good ideas.
But on this health care law, Mr. Doherty, would you vote to repeal it without certain things in place?
With a better plan. And I'll say this. I'll go on record tonight to say it, because I've never heard anyone else say this. I believe if President Obama is reelected, he himself will change that to strengthen it, because there are good ideas in it, and there are job killers in it. it. The 26-year-olds that don't, to be insured, that don't enroll in pre-existing conditions, those are very important to America, especially the 26-year-olds, where we have the highest unemployment rate, second highest in the United States of America. And you know, I've been to the college graduations where you see these folks, these young adults coming down excited about getting a job, and they can't find a job. So that's very important to Rhode Islanders, but we need to look at the efficiencies. We need to look at evidence-based standards of care. We need to look at tort reform. Even Peter Orszag has espoused tort reform.
Mr. Doherty, and believe it or not, we're rapidly approaching closing statements in the broadcast section here, so I need to move, I know it, I need to move very quickly here to cover a lot of ground. Here's a section where I ask each of you a yes or a no question. Again, I'm looking to move quickly, so yes or no, and I will alternate the order. Mr. Doherty, to you first. Yes or no, would you vote to repeal the Defense of Marriage Act, a law that denies federal recognition of same-sex marriages?
Yes.
Mr. Cicilline.
Would I vote to repeal it?
Would you vote to repeal it?
Yes.
Okay. You don't have to cover your microphone.
Buzzing.
Mr. Cicilline, yes or no, do you support term limits for congressmen, and if so, what would that limit be?
I have not. I don't support them because I think of what we. Because I think
that's a no. We have to go.
Okay.
Mr. Doherty, yes or no?
I've already. The answer is yes. I've already signed off on term limits. It's 6 years, 3 2-year terms, and the congressman has said he wants to be a career politician and stay in Washington for 20 years.
Brown University, Mr. Doherty, Brown University has banned ROTC from campus since 1969 and is now the only Ivy League school that doesn't allow ROTC on campus. Mr. Doherty, yes or no? Should they welcome ROTC back to Brown University?
Absolutely.
And Mr. Cicilline.
I think they should, but they obviously have to make that determination.
A final question with 5 seconds left. Yes or no, do you support Rhode Island's new law requiring identification when people go to vote? Mr. Cicilline.
I think it was a solution looking for a problem, but I commend the Secretary of State for ensuring that every single person can vote. I think it has not presented a problem.
That's a no, Mr. Doherty.
No.
He used about 20 words, but I'll just tell you, yes, I support it.
Okay. In just a moment, each of the candidates will have an opportunity to make their closing remarks for the televised portion of the debate. But first, I do want to remind you the debate will continue on WPRI.com for another half hour, and with some questions sent in from Eyewitness News viewers. That's live online until 8:30, right after the candidates' closing statements. And a reminder for our live audience, we ask that you please hold your applause until both candidates have finished the 30-second closing remarks. Let's begin. First, we start with Congressman David Cicilline. Mr. Cicilline.
Thank you again to WPRI. Thank you to the viewers for watching tonight. This is an important election, and it's not about Mr. Doherty. It's not about me. It's about the future of our state and the future of our country. And who do you believe is going to go to Washington, and who can you count on to stand up and fight for the things that are important to your family and to you? I've done that for the last 2 years. I promise you, if you give me the honor of representing you for 2 more years, I'll continue to fight for the things that are important to your family. Thank you,
Mr. Cicilline. Now, Mr. Doherty, your 30-second closing remarks.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. During the next few weeks, we all have an opportunity to examine 2 different candidates with different sets of values, different principles, and a different vision to bring America back and bring America forward. I ask you all to take a very, very close look at both candidates. My name is Brendan Doherty. I'm running for Congress. I'll always tell you the truth. It's as simple as that.
Thank you, Mr. Doherty. And now, to the live audience, your chance to applaud your candidates.
We're not leaving.
We remind you, our debate will continue live on WPRI.com for another 30 minutes. After the debate, we'll have complete wrap-up and analysis on WPRI.com, and a little later on Eyewitness News at 10 on Fox Providence and on Eyewitness News at 11 on WPRI 12. We want to thank the Providence Performing Arts Center for having us here tonight. Online, Campaign 2012 Congressional. This debate will continue. Questions sent in by our Eyewitness News viewers. We'll explore those for the next 30 minutes. For now, our live broadcast is ending on WPRI 12, but continues on WPRI.com.